Усын бүртгэл эдгээрийн зэвдээ дараахан нэрсэн боловч өнөөдөр бидний ярих гэж байгаа гол асуудал нь бол тавтаалын орсон байна. Өнөөдөр нэг хүндэт зочин лээсэн шин хоёр өдрийг нээж мөн хүндэт зочноор танилцуулж Монгол улсын ерөнхийлөгч захиагийн өдөр таныг бүх хэлнүүд тайлбарлая.
Хүн зочид үлдсэн хаттай мэлий энэ өдрийн өмнө амгалан айлтгая. Тэгээд анхудаа Монгол улсад Монголын Эдийн засгийн чуулган зохион байгуулж байгаа. Саяхан би Давосын Эдийн засгийн чуулганд оролцоод ирсэн. Давосын Эдийн засгийн чуулган гэж дэлхийн олон орноос олон нэр хүндтэй зочид оролцдог ийм чуулган бий болоод 40 жил болж байгаа юм. Энэ чуулганыг жирийн нэг эрдэмтэн санаачилсан байдаг. Клаус Шваб гэж. Тэгээд нэр хүндтэй уулзж байхад Давосын чуулганы нэг онцлог бол дэлхийн албан ёсны бодлогууд бий болохоос өмнө эхлээд Давосын чуулганы үзэл санаа болж яригддаг юм аа гэж хэлж байсан. Үнэхээр сүүлийн 40 жилд дэлхийд гарсан хамгийн том бодлогууд, хамгийн том шийдлүүд эхлээд Давосын чуулганд санааны хувьд яригддаг. Талхтасаа суулгачд ярьдаг. Тэгэхээр Монголын Эдийн засгийн чуулган бол ийм зорилготой ийм гэж үзэж байгаа. Өнөөдөр олон улсын маш олон байгууллагууд үүргээ сайн гүйцэтгэж чадахгүй маш их шүүмжилд оролцож байгаа. Албан ёсны байгууллагууд үүргээ гүйцэтгэж чадахгүй. Харин албан бус бүтцүүд хүмүүсийн өөрсдийнх нь оролцоотоо сайн санааны дэмжлэгтэйгээр цугладаг тэр бүтцүүд хамгийн сонирхлыг татж. Өнөөдөр албан ёсны том хурлууд зочид төлөөлөгчгүй байхад Давосын чуулганд оролцох гэсэн зочид төлөөлөгчид маш их байдаг. Өнөөдөр Монголын Эдийн засгийн чуулганыг анх зохион байгуулж байгаа энэ үед Монгол дотроос бизнесийн, улс төрийн, нийгмийн, олон нийтийн байгууллагын, иргэдийн, засаг төрийн янз бүрийн төлөөллөг ирж энэ сан бодлоо чөлөөтэй гэж. Энэ бол хамгийн чухал. Давосын чуулган дээр энэ жил сонирхол татж байгаа уул уурхайн асуудал, байгаль орчны асуудал. Америкийн ерөнхийлөгч Барак Обама банкны тухай хэлсэн. Тэн дээр банкны хүмүүс их очиж. Тэнд хүмүүс юу ярьж байна вэ гэж. Энэ Улаанбаатарын энэ чуулган бол юу болж өгөх вэ гэхээр дээр үед ярьдаг байсан. Хүрээний лам сонссон гэж. Хүрээний лам чих уртаа гэж. Хүрээний ламаас сонсъё гэж. Тэгэхээр эндээс нэг сург ажиг сонсох гэж ирдэг. Иргэжил татварын бодлого ямар байх юм бол доо. Иргэжил энэ асуудлаар ерөнхийлөгч ямар сүр байр суурьтай байх юм бол, засгийн газар ямар байр суурьтай байх юм бол, ерөөсөө бизнесийн орчин Монголд ямар байх юм болоо гэж сонирхож чих тавьж ирдэг ийм л чуулган болох ёстой гэж бодож. Тэгээд энд яригдсан гол санаанууд телевиз хэвлэмтэй олон нийтэд хүрээд за энэ асуудал ийм байдлаар шийдэгдэх гэж байгаа юм байна. Манай орон тулгамдж байгаа энэ асуудал ингэж шийдэгдэх гэж байгаа юм байна гэж. Ингэж зүг чиг нь гарч Монгол орны гол шийдэх гэж байгаа асуудлуудын хэлэлцүүд зөвхөн эдийн засгийн биш улс төр эрх зүйн шинжтэй хэлэлцүүдүүд энд санаа байдлаар төрж цаашаа аль байсны бодлого болж явахын сайхан эхлэл тавигдж байна гэж ингэж талхаж байгаамаа. Энэ учраас энэ чуулганыг зохион байгуулж байгаа бүх хүмүүс санаачлагчдад баяр хүргье. Олон зочин төлөөлөгч ирж байгаа манай одоо дотоодын мөн гаднаас бас зочин бидний чуулган уулзалтанд хүрэлцэн ирж байгаа. Энэ Фернандо де Сото гэдэг хүний тухай 9 жилийн өмнө нэг лекцэн дээрээс Капиталын нууц гэдэг номынхаа нэг өчүүхэн хэсгийг манай багш нэг лекц орж явахдаа зааж авах нь уншаад тэгээд харталт нь юу гэж ütсэн бэ гэхээр энэ хүнтэй уулзнаа гэж ütчихсэн. 9 жилийн өмнө. Тэгээд энэ хүний эрэлт гарсан, интернетээр ирсэн, хаягийг олсон. Тэгээд хамгийн гол миний зорилго бол эхлээд уулзах. Тэгээд болж игэл Капиталын нууц гэдэг энэ номыг Монголд орчуулах эрхийг зөвшөөрлийг энэ хүнээс авах юмсан гэсэн ийм л мөрөөдөл надад төрсөн. Тэгээд ярьсаар байгаа, хоорондоо холбоо барьсаар байгаа уулзах гэсэн энэ хүмүүс маш завгүй олон газар явж байдаг хүн. Тэгж байгаа над руу нэг мэйл ичихтэй. Би Египт рүү явнаа одоо сарын дараа. Тэдэнд ингээд явна. Майамигийн Висконсины буудлаас дамжиж явах гэж байгаа. Тэнд би нэг хэдэн цаг явнаа. Тэнд ирж уулзаарай гэсэн. Тэгээд би Майамигийн олон улсын Висконсины буудлаар нисэж очиж тэнд хастаач онгоцсон жоохон саатаж 5 цаг үтэй тэнд уулзах боломж гарч ирсэн. Тэгээ миний анхны хүсэлт бол мэдээж номын орчуулах зөвшөөрөл авахын хүсэлтийг тавьж ирсэн. Тэр хүсэлтээ надад тавьж ирсэн. Анхны сонирхол бол уулзах сонирхолтой байсан. Дараагийн номын орчуулах. Тэгээд уулзаад байсан чинь энэ хүн бол дэлхийн олон орноор явж тэр Капиталын нууцыг яаж тэр эд шидийг илрүүлж жирийн энгийн аль дээрээ улс орнуудад хүргэдэг маш том төсөл хэрэгжүүлдэг болох нь мэдрэгдсэн. Ингээд би шууд одоо Монголд очих хэрэгтэй байна. Та одоо манад очооч. Бидэнд таны яриад байгаа чинь маш их хэрэгтэй байна. Та очооч гэсэн. Тэгээд надад юу гэж хэлсэн бэ гэхээр би зөвхөн ерөнхийлөгчийн урилгаар очдог гоо гэж хэлсэн. Тэгээд энэ юу гэж байгаа юм бэ гэсэн чинь үгүй. Ингэж л очихгүй миний цаг үнэтэй. Дээрээс нь энэ бол улс төрийн баталгаа. Би зүгээр жуулчин хийх гэж очихгүй. Хэрвээ очих юм бол энэ төслийн юм хэрэгжүүлэх гэж очив. Тийм учраас албан ёсны ажиллаж байгаа ерөнхийлөгч урах юм бол би очноо гэж ингэж хэлжсэн. Тэгээ энэ хүний даалгавар надад хатуу байсан ба 2005 онд ерөнхийлөгч болсон. Тэгээ ерөнхийлөгч болсны дараа миний одоо эрхэм манд надад имэйл бичиж баяр хүргэж за нэг ярьжсэн юм хэрэгжүүл болохоор боллоо шүү гэж. Ингээд тэр бас тэр Димагаас 2 удаа ажлын хэсэг Монголд ирж ажиллаж маш их олон сараар тэгээд их тийм чухал одоо зөвлөмж үлдээж төсөл хэрэгжүүлэхээр ажиллаж байсан. Харамсалтай миний ажил тасалдсан. Ингээд бидний үйл ажиллагаа зогссон юм байна. Тэгээд дараа нь ноёдны бас одоо сонгуулийн дараагаар холбоо баригдаад тэгээд Нью-Йоркт уулзъя 9 сард уулзъя гэж ингээд тодорхойлсон. Тэгээд 9 сард Димагаас Нью-Йорк руу нисчилж уулзаад за одоо Монголд очих шүү. Одоо албаасаар уулзна. Одоо нэг хүрээд очиороо гэж ингэж хэлсэн. Тэгээд очноо гэж ингэж хэлсэн юм байна. Зүгээр Сото гэдэг энэ хүн бол энэ өнөөдрийн бидний яриад байгаа олон зовлон шийдэх тэр өвдөс тэр аргыг тэр зүйлийг ажиглаж харсан хүн байна. Бид нар энэ ядууртаа тэнцэх гээд энэ улс орныхоо эдийн засгийг хөгжүүлэх гээд янз бүрээр оролцож байна. Энэ тэндээс нь орлоо даг шиг байна. Тэгээд заримдаа ядууртаа тэнцэнгээд нэг үйл ажиллагаа явуулахаар заримдаа харахаар хүмүүс нь уламж ядуураад даг шиг харагдаад байна. Ерөөсөө тоо буурахгүй хүмүүсийн амьдрал хэцүү байна. Тэгэхээр одоо ирж байгаа нь бол мэдээж Сото бол хүн цагт ирж байгаа, зөв зөвхөн болж байгаа энэ хүн цаг. Монголчууд ярьдаг Тэнгэрийн муухай арилсан гэж. Гэхдээ өнөөдөр энэ ядуурлын муухай Монголоос арилгахгүй байна. Энэ ажилгүйдлийн муухай Монголоос арилгахгүй байна. Ажилгүй хүний хувьд бол энэ зуудууд үргэлжилсээр байна. Ядуу хүний хувьд бол энэ хямрал үргэлжилсээр байна. Ажилгүй байгаа хүний хувьд бол энэ хямрал дуусаагүй. Тэгэхээр эндээс яаж гарах вэ гэдэг аргыг олсон хүн бол үнэхээр Фернандо де Сото юм аа гэж ингэж бодож. Би одоо энэ хүнийг Монголд ирээд эдний баг өнөөдөр Монголд ажиллаж энэ хүн ихээс өмнө бараг 20 хоног ажиллаж байгаа ерөн хүн. Энэ зууднаа манай ямар нэгэн аль ёсны байгууллагатай холбоо барих. Ерөнхийлөгчийн хамтран газрын зүгээс тусдаа аваад явъя. Манай энэ яам хариуцсан гэдэг танаа албаныхантай бид уулзах бай. Бид өөрсдөө явж судалгаа. Бид өөрсдийн арга барилтай. Тэгээд энэ Улаанбаатарын гэр хороолол энэ утаатай байгаа газар хөдөө орон нутаг энэ зөв зөвхөн болж байгаа айлт масчин өгөхүүдээр энэ хүмүүс өөрсдөө явж. Өөрсдөө бид нар хүмүүсийн чинь амьдрал ямар вэ? Юундаа танаа асуудал болохгүй байвэ гэдгийг мэддэг олж авдаг ийм аргатай энэ аргаар бид хэрэглэн гэж ингэж явж байгаа. Тэгээд энэ аргаа бол ерөнхийдөө олсон болов уу гэж би бодож байна. Би энэ хүний хэрэгжүүлэхийн төсөл бол Монголд үрдэн гарна гэж бодож байна. Монгол бол хагалсан газар шиг тийм л газар. Боломж бүхэн байна. Би өөртөө ерөөсөө Монгол нэг л бодлого хийх ёстой хүн бүхэнд. Сайн юм байгаа бол Монгол руу хүрээдэг. Сайн санаа байгаа бол монголчууд авъя. Сайн менежмент байгаа бол Монгол руу авъя. Илүү юм байгаа бол Монгол руу хүрээдэг. Шинэ технологиг Монгол авъя. Асуудлыг шийдэх шинэ арга байгаа бол Монголд хүрээдэг. Монголд тавтаа морил гэж бид нар энэ бүх боломжуудыг үржих ёстой. Содод хүн сурталтнууд гаднаа инээж өгдөг. Дотроо жоохон дургу байдаг. Яагаад гэвэл тэр хүн сурталтнуудын албан тушаалаа хадгалдаг, баяждаг, аюулгад авдаг тэр хэрэгслийг содод алга болгож жирийн хүмүүст хүлээлгэж өгдөг хүн. Нөгөө хүн сурталтнуудын баяж боломжийг зогсоогоор жирийн хүмүүс амьдралаа үүднэт боломжийг жирийн хүмүүст өгхийн төлөө явдаг хүн гэж ингэж ойлгож. Ийм учраас атаарчид, зөвлөлчид янз бүрийн улсууд байдаг. Ажил хийж байгаа хүн бол муу нэр сонсдог гэж монголчууд ярьдаг. 30 гаруй оронд өнөөдөр Фернандо Сото ардчил эрхчлөөний институт нь энэ төслөө хэрэгжүүлж байгаа. Үрдэн гарч байгаа газрууд бий, зарим нь домголж байгаа. Зарим нь сайн ажиллаж байгаа. Үнэхээр сэтгэлээ тавиад ажилласан газар бол үрдэн гарч. Тэр Египт рүү явж байхдаа Хосни Мубарак гэдэг ерөнхийлөгчийн урилгаар явж байхдаа явж байгаа гэж надад хэлжсэн. Дараа нь Хосни Мубарак хэлсэн байдаг. Одоо интернет дээр байж. Хэрвээ Фернандо Сотогийн яриад байгаа юмыг Египтэд хэрэгжүүлэх юм бол Египтийн түүхийн хаалга дахин нэрвэнэ гэж хэлсэн байна. Ямар агуу түүхтэй орон билээ та бүхэн мэднэ. Гэхдээ энэ хүний хэлж байгаа ярьж байгаа юм Египтэд хэрэгжих юм бол Египтийн түүхийн хаалга дахин нэрвэнэ гэж. Путинтай уулзсан тухайгаас одоо надад ярьжсэн. Бүр бүх номыг Орос руу орчуулаад бүгдийг зурцсан сууж ирсэн гэж. Путин хэлсэн байдаг. Энэ хүний хэлж ярьж байгаа зүйл бол энэ дэлхийд даяар гайхамшигтай амжилтыг олж байна. Оросууд бид нар маш их сохрын байна гэж. Оросын холбооны улсын ерөнхийлөгч байсан Путин тэгж хэлсэн байна. Үнэхээр 20 дугаар зуунд дэлхийн хүн төрөлхтний түүхийг авч өөрчилсөн хоёр агуу хүн бил. Нэг нь Тэлчер. Тэлчер юу гэж хэлсэн бэ гэхээр ингэж хэлсэн байна. Тэгвэл Сото бидний олж хараагүй байгаа юмыг олж харсан байна. Нөгөө бидний мартчихад байгаа тэр нууцыг илрүүлсэн байна. Ерөөсөө бидний хэрэглээгүй байгаа хүчийг олж харсан байна. Бид чинь ерөөсөө хүмүүсээ хайчаад байгаа юм биш. Нэг л том бодлого яриад өгөхөд хүмүүс нь үзэгч чиг байгаа гэдэг. Тэгэхээр энэнийг өөрчлөх хувьсгал бол Сото хийж байгаа юм байна гэж хэлээд. Маргарет Тэтчер 20 дугаар зууны сүүлээр 80-аад оны дунд ингэж хэлсэн байт. Нэг нь орооноос ирээд хөгжил дэвшил төрөх зөвхөн өгших шатыг энэ хүн бүтээжээ гэж хэлсэн байт. Фернандо Сото хөгжил дэвшил төрөх зөвхөн өгших, уруудах зөвхөн өгшихийн шатыг бүтээсэн байна гэж хэлсэн байна. Өнөөдөр дэлхийд амьдарч байгаа ерөнхийлөгчийн ажиллаа хийхээ болцсон экс-ерөнхийлөгч нараас хамгийн амжилттай ажиллаж амьдарч байгаа хүнийг би Америкийн нэгдсэн улсын ерөнхийлөгч байсан Билл Клинтон гэж боддог. Фернандо Сотогийн сайн найз. Тэр хүн хэлсэн байдаг. Фернандо Сото өнөөдөр дэлхийд амьдарч байгаа хамгийн алдартай эдийн засагч аа. Тэгэхээр шагналын тухай ярих юм бол маш олон шагнал байна. Энийг яриад явах. Адам Смитээс ахуулаад Милтон Фридман, Фишер эдийн засаг эрхчлэл ардчлалыг байж болох тэр шагналуудыг эрхчлэлний төлөө үйл ажиллагаа явуулдаг тэр байгууллагууд хамгийн өндөр шагналаас одоо тавьсан байна. Хэвлэлээс ганцхан жишээ татъя. Тайм сэтгүүл бид нар бүгдээрээ мэднэ. Хүн төрөлхтний түүхэнд хамгийн их нөлөө үзүүлсэн 100 хүний нэгээр Фернандо Сотог нэрлсэн байна. Эдийн засаг, бусад форумс, Германы, Европын олон сэтгүүлүүд нийлж байгаа Адам Смитээс ахуулаад өнөөдөр амьдарч байгаа 12 агуу эдийн засгийн нэгээр гэж хэлсэн байна. Тэгэхээр энэ хүний хойноос олон орны парламент хөөцөлдөж, олон орны засгийн газар хөөцөлдөж, ядуу биш, бүр чадтай хөөцөлдөж энэ хүний зөвлөгөө, энэ хүний лекцийг сонсох гэж хөөцөлдөж байгаа. Их толгой, их наймынхан цуглчаад Фернандо Сотог үрж зөвлөгөө авч лекцийг сонсож байгаа. Асианы удирдагчид цуглчаад Фернандо Сотог үрж зөвлөгөө авч лекцийг сонсож байгаа. Энэ утгаар нь бид нар үнэхээр хойноос нь хөөцөлдөж ингэж байна. Гэхдээ би энэ зүйлийг хэлмээр байна. Фернандо Сотог ичтэмшээ. Энэ хүн бол Монгол ирээд манай оронд ирээд тэр баг нь ирээд нэггүй хэлүүд эмчигсэн. Тэр бага явуулаад энд өвчин байна. Олон жил илэрсэж чадахгүй үсгээр олон жил энэ хүмүүс зовж сандж хаана өвчин байна гэж яг энэ шиг онцтой гэж. Тэгээд онцоо тавиад одоо энэ цуглуулсан юм авч Лима руу авчиж тэнд байгаа Excel арчлыг институт дээр авчиж бүх зүйлээ нэгтгэхэд тэгээд за ийм зүйл Монгол болохгүй. Ийм зүйлийг ингэж засах хэрэгтэй. Ийм хууль гаргах хэрэгтэй, ийм бодлого явуулах хэрэгтэй гэдэг зөвлөгөө гаргаж байна. Тэгээд ийм төсөл энэ орнд хэрэгжүүлэх хэрэгтэй юм байна сандраа. Энэ хүний хэлж байгаа төсөл ярьж байгаа зүйл Монгол хэрэгжүүлгүй гэдэг биднээс л шалтгаална. Өөр хинээс биш. Энэ хүн ирээд бидний амьдралыг өөрчилж чадах. Үнэхээр тэр төслийн бидний улс төрийн хувьд эдийн засгийн хувьд бүх талаасаа дэмжиж хүн ард минь өөрсдөө эрүүл явах юм бол явж чадна. Альва эмчилгээ бол тэр эмчил бичиж өгсөн дагуу эмчилгээ хийвэл зөв болдог. Гамаа зөв байх хэрэгтэй, эмээзүү хэрэглэх хэрэгтэй. Тэгээд тэр байх ёстой байдлаар байж сайн зөвлөж ажиллах хэрэгтэй. Тэгэх юм бол Монгол амжилт гарах боломжтой. Фернандо де Сотогийн баг Монгол засгийн газартаа харилцан ихтгэлцлийг ийм санал бичиж байгуулж байгаа. Тэгээд ингээд цаашаа энэ бодлого нь хэрэгжээсэй гэж би үнэхээр ингэж бодож байна. Энэ хүн бол энгийн хүн. Та бүхэн энэ гарцны текст уншиж хараарай. Энэ сууж байгаа заалт сууж байгаа бүхэн Фернандо де Сотогоос өөрийгөө олж харна. Ямар нэгэн хэсгээ аливаа хосон зантаа зүгээр л энгийн манайхан ярьдаг сайхан гүнжүүгээр хүн гэж ярьдаг. Тийм л хүн. Тийм хүн. Тийм ичдэн биш. Энэ бүхэн энэ санаагаа та бүхэн ярьж байна. Ер нь 2004 онд ном орчуулсан үүнээс хойш манайд маш олон фэнүүд нь маш олон одоо шүтэн бишрэгчт нь бий болсон юм уу. Монголчууд бол олон жил хүлээсэн гэж ингэж боддог. Би Эрнандад хэлмээр байна. Зүгээр л сайн найзындаа ирсэн шиг бай. Тэг. Том хурал дээр ихтгэл тавьж байгаа гэж битгий бол. Зүгээр л сайн найзтай амьдралд нь хэцүү байгаа зүйлд нь туслах гэж зөвлөгөө өгөх гэж ирсэн шиг. Цаашаа олон жил хамтарч ажиллах сайн найзындаа ирсэн шиг байна. Би 9 жил энэ хүний хойноос үзсэн. Би ерөнхийдөө багтаа уулзаагүй, ерөнхий сайд багтаа уулзаагүй. Би зүгээр оюутан багтаа уулзсан. Энэ хоёр амьдрал дээр тохиолдож байгаа баяр жаргалаа шуулцдаг хэцүү хүнд байдлаас хоорондоо уцаар ярилцдаг юм л болсон. Тэгээ Монголд ирээч. Тэгээ үнэхээр олон жил хүлээсэн сайн амьдрал өнөөдөр энэ бэлэгт сайн өнөөдөр энэ одоо чухал үйл явдлын дундуур хүрч ирлээ. Ингээд удаан жил хүлээсэн үнэ. Энэ үнэтэй индустрия Фернандо де Сото Фолор таны хүрч байна.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for your very kind words, flattering. I hope to be able to live up to them. That presentation was too good. And good to see you here, Mr. Prime Minister, whom I had the honor of meeting yesterday. I have a very few minutes in which to focus on the task that you asked me to look at, which is where is the mystery? The mystery of capitalism, the mystery of development. Why do I say that there's a mystery? It's because this is not a new story. This is an old story. Developed countries, Western Europe, North America, have been developing in a market economy mode with a democracy for now, depending on how you want to look at it, at least 150 years. Maybe you could say France and the United States 200 years. And as they've grown, they have tried to spread the message. They have had colonies. They have colonized Asia. They have colonized Africa. They have colonized Latin America. And here we are, many of us of the former Soviet Union and developing countries, and we're still not developed. So obviously, there's a mystery, because they actually did want us to become prosperous, and it means that there's something missing in the lesson. The key to that is something that Albert Einstein used to say when asked about his theory of relativity, which is how do you find truth? He said it depends how you position yourself. So he used to ask, for example, how does the fish know about the water in which it swims? I mean, if you look at a fish, the fish will say, look, it's so easy to float. You can go up, you can go down, you can defy gravity. But if you're not in the aquarium and in the water, you can easily see that you can't do that, because what he has is water. So the question of Einstein was, what does the fish know about the water in which it swims? Which means that when the Westerners try and teach us how they got to where they did over many generations, they don't necessarily know the whole story, because they're so advanced, they moved into the 21st century. And sometimes they teach us what's the latest. And sometimes what we need to know is not the latest, but the beginning, the genesis. How did they start to grow? When they too were developing countries, when they had gross domestic products per capita that were even below ours. So if you go to their basic writings, the people who put the ideas together at the end of the 18th century, the beginning of the 20th century, all the way from John Locke's Adam Smith, all the way to the 19th century, Karl Marx, they had basically come to an agreement. And it was that the wealth that they were noticing then growing with the Industrial Revolution, which occurred before Adam Smith was able to identify it, but he was within it, it was that the key to success, the mystery was the division of labor. By division of labor, what they meant is ever-increasing specialization. People, the way Adam Smith illustrated this is by saying, if you have a pin factory, and I have seen one outside Glasgow, and 2 people are making pins, their productivity is about 14 pins a day. But I have seen places where there are 11 people making pins, and these 11 people making pins make over 20,000 pins a day. Why? Because they do not go and make the wire. They buy the wire from somebody who specializes. And they have somebody to test wire, and somebody else knows how to stretch it, and somebody else knows how to cut it into little pieces, and somebody else knows how to draw the point on the wire, and somebody else knows how to put a flat top on the other extent. So this specialization, this division of the labor, is what accounts for higher productivity, and this is the way to go. That's the explanation, the neoclassical explanation. Now, all of this is true. Later on, Marx himself said, look at a locomotive. A locomotive is made from 5,000 pieces that come from over 2,000 different places. So that indicates the division of labor. People make different parts of the engine. Recently, Mead, an American economist, also explained how a pencil was made from the wood of Oregon, was made from graphite that came from Sri Lanka, but it broke. And so you had to bring in Candelia wax from Mexico so that it wouldn't break. You had to bring lacquer from France. You had to bring erasers that were made from petroleum that came from Saudi Arabia, that to put to the erasers. You had to paste them to the pencil with a little filament of metal that is always black because it comes from black nickel of Nigeria, zinc from Peru, and copper from Chile. And at the end, he explains how a pencil is made from 17 countries. So we know about the division of labor. The big question, the big mystery is, how do you bring all of that together? To bring all of that together, you need to have facts and relationships with people that you have never seen or met before, either in your own country, because even a country of 3 million inhabitants, it's a lot of inhabitants, can't know everybody. And if you're in a global economy, we're 7 billion people. My address book has 3,000 names that I can remember. You can't know everybody. So, the interesting part of American and European history is the one that is not written, which is what happened in the middle of the 19th century when the feudal system, the central planned bureaucratic systems collapsed, the patrimonial systems collapsed, the tribal system collapsed, and there was huge confusion, lots of rebellion, lots of social unrest. The seeds of the Soviet Revolution were already in the making, and recessions lasted 15, 20 years. All the bad things of the world happened. A few people started saying, let's now find out, in all of this dispersion that's a division of labor, what can we do to help all the loose strands come together? How does it pull together? And there you start, if you look at the annals of the different parliaments, the legislators, the schools of economists, the lawyers that were working for about 50 to 100 years but never published books, so it's not easy to read. They then went and started trying to bring the strands together. How did they do that? Well, what they started basically doing is saying, we're missing a few institutions. We need property rights to identify. We need property rights to be able to identify everybody, to know who owns what. We need a system of social intelligence that we don't have until now. And we have therefore got to learn to record things in such a way that information comes in a permanent and updated way. Because we have no way to know by looking at people, we have to know by description. And Bertrand Russell, already at the beginning of at the end of the 19th century, was saying there's two ways for people to understand things. Knowledge by acquaintance, for example, I've met your president by acquaintance. But before I knew him by acquaintance, I knew him by description. If I tell you that the country of Ecuador exists, or if I tell you that Genghis Khan conquered the world, you don't know that by acquaintance. You know it by description. So you have to learn to organize a world of description that you can trust. How do we do that? That was the first challenge. How does property not only become a record of pieces of land, but becomes a record of transactions and relationships? How does that happen? Let me explain. I have here an asset that belongs to me. I was invited the other night to spend a very comfortable and exciting day by the president outside Ulaanbaatar, and I went to my room where he left me some fruit. So I guess he was transferring the property to me, and I legitimately took the apple that was there, which is probably a Chinese apple, from what I understand. This is Fernando's apple. Now, if you look at Fernando's apple, you will see that there is nothing in this apple that makes it mine, or look like mine, because a stolen apple looks exactly like a legal apple. So an apple has no quality to it and does not reflect the relationship that took place between the president and myself. Nothing in this apple, even if you cut it in two, says that it was initially an apple that came from China, that was eventually put into the hands of the president, who passed it to a Peruvian citizen, using it and now publicizing it here in Mongolia. Nothing said about it. Nothing says that this apple can be bought, that it can be sold, what price, that it can be rented, that it can be collateralized, that it can be mortgaged, that it can be leased, that it can be transferred, that it can be a dominion apple, that it can be a point of reference. I can do with this apple 200 things that are typical of this apple, but that are not in this apple. So making a record of objects and assets is not enough, because objects and assets cannot tell a story, cannot describe relationships. At that time in Europe, many people were already thinking what the world was composed of. And the 20th century's most foremost philosopher, who supposedly is Ludwig Wittgenstein, when he was asked to describe the universe in just one phrase, said the universe is composed of things in relationship to each other. Things in relationship to each other. It's a phrase of incredible brilliance, because he says that we are made up of two things. We are made up in the world of apples, things, people, horses, mountains, territory, blackberries, computers, and relationships, which is division of labor and how we organize ourselves in society. But we only see things, we cannot see relationships. How can you capture a relationship? Now, a relationship is extremely important, because parallelly to the thinking in economics in the 19th century, there was the thinking on the physical world, the physiological world. People already knew that we were probably composed, the average human being, of about 32 million cells. Atoms make up cells, cells make up organs, and organs make us as persons. But who and what organizes them? What makes them relate to each other? By about 1860, a Swiss physiologist discovered for the first time and isolated a nucleic acid called the DNA. The DNA, in which the formula on how cells relate to each other, the blueprint on how information is organized to make us who we are, was first isolated to the point that today, 150 years later, you can get identified by that formula. Nobody identifies the president and says he has 30 million cells and I have 32 million cells. That's not the difference between him and me. The difference between him and me is the organizing factor DNA, which is basically a formula. So while in economics we were looking for the formula of relationships, in science they were advancing towards also finding that out. How do you get it out? So for example, when I, as a political and human citizen of Peru, came to Mongolia, and I was asked, coming through migrations, please identify yourself. And I said, well, I'm Fernando de Soto Polar de la Jara Ugarte Landazuri Vargas Jimenez Enriquez de la Huerta. They said, that's very interesting. What more? I said, originally, my family came from Spain, another came from Italy. They came together 400 years ago through the city of Moquegua, and the man at Migrations of Mongolia said, stop. Give me your passport. That's my DNA. Because in my passport, he now had a standard document that describes me, that makes a reference to my DNA, that makes a reference to my blood type, that says a picture of me. So when he took it, he looked at it, and he looked at me, and he looked at it, and he looked at me again. He has a biometric relationship of my nose to my eyes, the distance between my eyes. I don't have hair. I don't have hair. I'm this tall. I'm this tall. I weigh more or less this. Who am I married? Am I not married? What's my address? Did I do military service? Where was I last? All is contained in the DNA that the world has created through law to capture not me as a physical thing, but me as a standard description that can be universally identified and therefore held accountable. Is he a terrorist? Is he a Peruvian? Was he invited? Is he welcome? Is he not welcome? When's he coming? When's he going? When's he leaving? All of that is here. Now, that means that I go back to Wittgenstein, the world is composed of two things. Things and relationships. And what we human beings have done, without the Westerners have done in Europe and the United States, without totally being conscious of it, is that just like they have developed the DNA to describe how things come together, they have found the DNA to describe how identities come together, and have found that facts can be established. Not information only, but facts. Information organized in such a way that it can be tested for truth, because it's a universal standard language, and organized in such a way that whether it is a Mongolian passport, a Pakistani passport, an American passport, a Peruvian passport, you can recognize things. All right. What's the DNA of a market economy? The DNA of a market economy is your property systems. I didn't do it, I discovered it. I discovered that when you go out and you start establishing in a standard form who owns what and where, if you do it right, not like a geographer, not like a computer expert, not like a land tenure specialist, but like somebody who wants to begin to know how all of society can interconnect to produce the division of labor, you have then got the DNA, the blueprint, the key to the mystery of how the market begins to work. We have gone, and I don't know, some of it is there in the pictures up there. We have gone and visited at the request of your president, or my friend Elbert Deutsch, and after having conversed about this with government, to have 850 interviews with, of course, 4 Peruvian colleagues of mine who did all this work, together with about 20 Mongolians, and had 850 interviews, and went to the different houses around Ulaanbaatar to pick up, where's your property plan? And we found out that really one that you can use to go to the bank, that you can go anywhere, that it is filled up as my passport for one of the Western world, actually doesn't have more. Since I didn't do the study, I'm sorry, I have to get the information from here. We found that there are many that only 8% of them have an identification regarding where they're going. Doesn't mean that they don't have a piece of paper. Every one of them has a piece of paper. There are papers given by government. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are standards. One is a land right. One is a transition document. One is a land office right. One is a reporting document, etc. But not only that, those who don't have paper have given themselves paper. So when somebody told me, one of the problems you're going to have, Mr. De Soto, when you come to Mongolia, is that you will not be able to understand the nomadic mind. We are different, we Mongolians. I already know a little bit how you're different. Because we have found reporting of daily business, receipts of daily business, done by the Mongolian people themselves. And we don't have space here to put everything, but we will find hundreds of those. So, Mongolia is already documented. It's not standardly documented, but it's documented. And if it wants to become a market economy, since we have to find the same language, the question is, how do you then put that information about the relationships, the things that you cannot see when you look at a house, the things that you cannot see when you look at the machine, How do you put it into the legal information that then characterizes the nation? We have found that all of this that all of these poor people that live in these intelligently drawn tents, which the president described to me, made of wood and mutton skin, and there's stoves in the middle, and the more richer ones in total are about, at substitution value, $7.1 billion. That's their value. $7.1 billion is the value of all four, is 7 times the value of the foreign direct investment in Mongolia. So even the poor have a lot of capital. But because it is not described, and it is more like this than like that, it's only 7 billion, which could actually be 14 billion, 21 billion, we don't know. And what happens if all of those things become crudely titled? Immediately a wealth creation process will take place. If, for example, I look at it, the other day I was invited by my friend Mr. Baber to the Open Society Institute. Very nice building that belongs, of course, I suppose, to my friend George Soros. And I said, I like it. What happens if we want to buy this building? Could it be $2 million? Everybody said, yeah, could be $2 million. Good. What happens if we sign? And then I asked Mr. Soros, do you have a clear document that establishes how this building relates to the bank, to the financial interest, to the mortgages, to the buyer, to the seller, to the previous buyers? It is cleared of all encumbrances. Easements are easily brought out, so I know exactly what I'm buying. And somebody said, oh no, but we don't have an up-to-date title. But it's okay. You know, the president knows Mr. Soros, the prime minister knows the building. These are all good people. Will that building be worth $2 billion? It will not be worth $2 billion. Nothing that is not on a standard piece of paper catches its value. I would even take a risk if I bought it for $10,000. Yet, at replacement value, only around Ulaanbaatar, it would seem that you've got close to $7 billion of what we would call dead capital. So this is a country with an absolute enormous amount of potential. It has an enormous amount of potential because the moment that property, if you do it not on the basis of an inventory of land, this is different. Not like a catastrophe, that is different. But as the document that relates you to the whole economy, that is so good, that you have cleared of so many obstacles, it can take you 170 days to get a property title in Ulaanbaatar if you're poor. 170 days, working 8 hours a day. And if you want to, you die, your son takes it, you divorce, you split it, then you have to do another 70 days. So if the system is not recorded, it's not updated. If you have a system that actually updates the information and is as precise as my passport, and is as precise as my Visa card. You know, when I went to the hotel, they said, Mr. DeSoto, how are you going to pay your debts when you leave the hotel? You're going to make a lot of phone calls. You're going to go to the mini bar and drink a lot of whiskey. You're going to go for room service. How's that going to work? So I said, I will pay my debts. I'm an honorable man known in Peru. I'm one of few Peruvians who don't actually take money away from you. I will pay my debts. And they said, Mr. DeSoto, do you have a credit card? And I said, yes, I have a Visa. Then the Mongolian at the hotel trusted me. All of a sudden, I became a very trusted person, thanks to a standard document. If you are able to give all of your assets the right kind of treatment so that they are all adequately described, at that moment, all sorts of things will start happening without you even having to plan for them. Credit. Credit comes from the word credibility, from the word in Latin, credere, which means I believe in you because you have something to lose. If you don't have anything to lose, I don't believe in you. It's very simple. It's like the nice Mongolian who received me at the hotel. He believed in me when I showed him I had a Visa card to use. It's that simple. You will have capital. You're going to say to yourself, how do you get capital? Well, you're going to be a big, important mining country, understand. You've discovered a wealth of 18 different minerals. Interesting. My country, Peru, also has 18 different minerals. And it's already a big mining country, considering our size and our distance from the world. Now, that's full of capital. And somebody will tell you, yes, but that capital will come from abroad. I say no, will come from Mongolia. If you are able to understand that capital is not created by physical things, but is created by relationships that are secure. Let me explain how it works in Peru. And you will tell me if it works or not that way in Mongolia. A foreign company come in, God bless them, they're needed. They look at a piece of territory in Peru where they think there is gold, where they think there is petrol. And then they tell the government, give me a property right on it. Tell me, I want it. And the government gives them a property right in the form of a concession. So they come out with a piece of paper. They have a good property right. Then, if it's a foreign country of a developed nation, they have made you already sign, or you will sign, a bilateral investment treaty with them, which says that all investments of that country abroad, let's say it's the United States, are protected on the basis of an international treaty. So all of a sudden, the title to that concession, that property rights, is not only a good title, it's a super title, because it is guaranteed by the Mongolian government and the U.S. government. Good, this is security. Then the entrepreneur will take that title and go to the Office of Private Investment Corporation in the United States and get a guarantee for that property right. And that guarantee means that now he has a good, super, duper property right. And then he will take that one and go to MIGA of the World Bank, where 196 countries have created a guarantee facility so that if ever the Mongolian government decides to expropriate that company, they will be supervised and they will have to follow a due process. So that good title has become super duper triple duper title. Then with that piece of paper, they go to the capital markets and say, boy, do I have a piece of property for you. If in the United States you had a piece of property and Mr. Obama decided to expropriate it because he wants to make a road through it, perfectly rational, it's called eminent domain, you have a process and they can take it away from you. But in Mongolia, I have got the guarantee of the Mongolian government, the guarantee of the American government, the guarantee of OPEC, and the guarantee of the World Bank and all the community of nations that you cannot touch me really. Not really. Have you ever seen something so beautiful in your life? You haven't. There's around $3 billion. That's the money that's coming. It's not coming from the United States. It's coming from Mongolia. From a property right in Mongolia. Because at the end of the day, whether he realizes it or not, Mr. Bernanke, when he sizes up how much liquidity the market needs, he will come up with an initial $3 billion that will be the investment. But where did it come from? From here. And the sooner you understand that it is basically the security of the law among your citizens put out in documents that are put up to date, not describing the apple, not a physical cadastral title of the apple, but a legal security that handles all the relationships you will have begun to form capital. So when your property system starts working and it starts spreading, you will then be able to look at credit, at capital. You will be able to look at utilities. A company will come and say, I want to give electricity to all of the poor people of Mongolia at a very cheap price. But they have to pay. Not much, but they have to pay. Today, in countries like mine, the problem is not that people steal electricity. The problem is that you don't really know who's in charge of every home. I mean, you know where the wire goes to every home, but you don't know who's finally responsible for paying because the titles aren't connected. They don't give you that information, as a result of which collection costs are so high that from Peru to India, only about 50% of the people pay up. So then the rates go up and poor people don't get the electricity, don't get the clean water, don't get the sewage. So without property, there is no credit, no capital, no utilities. There's no justice through the police. There's no security. 9/11, a terrible act occurred. The people of Osama bin Laden crashed their planes on various edifices of the United States. And within 3 days, the Americans caught all of those who in the United States had started doing this vandalous act. And they caught them because those who were living in the United States had records of homes, records of hotels, records of schools where you teach people to drive airplanes. They could make the connections, and they caught them all. But in Afghanistan, where there is no address systems, and where addresses are by reference, Osama bin Laden lives somewhere in the mountains, the third gate from the left, right after 5 buildings. They haven't caught him. Police cannot work if you do not have an address system. So even security is not in place there. Money. I had a long conversation with my friend Alan Greenspan at a moment when I had written my book. He called me in and he said, property seems to be really important, doesn't it? I said, absolutely. And I said, even to make money. How? He said, well, Mr. Greenspan, how do you know how much money to put into the market? She says, well, I try and find out how much liquidity the market needs to make transactions and to make savings. According to that, I have formulas that allow me to say if I put too much, it's inflation. If I put too little, it's deflation. I said, yeah, but how do you find that out? Is it a central intelligence system that goes out and looks at every factory? No, he says, that doesn't work that way. How do you do it? He says, I go to the markets. I have statistics from the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. I have statistics from the New York Stock Exchange. I see all of those people. And I say, oh, it's like the cowboy films I saw. For example, in the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, it's John Wayne with a lot of cowboys that take all their cows right through the center of the United States into Chicago to sell them. He said, no, that's not the way it works today. What they have are pieces of paper that they exchange. I said, pieces of paper? What pieces of paper, Mr. Greenspan? So he said, I know what you're saying now. Property pieces of paper. I said, imagine if people didn't have property that is recorded and you didn't have exchanges where property is interchanged. Could you be able to then know how much money you've got to print? My country has 70% informality. It had it then. How would you know how much money to print? He said, that's an interesting point. I really don't know. Maybe we've been a deflationary economy all this time. Or an inflationary, we don't know. It's an interesting idea. So, when you go in and formalize your economy, when you look at property is not a question of giving somebody a piece of paper over a piece of land. Property is the starting point from which you are going to get facts. Facts is something that were very much studied by the philosophers and the lawyer philosophers of Europe. What's a fact? A fact isn't a piece of information. A fact is something you can test for truth, that is organized for its truth, that is standardized. And what the capitalist system of the West has created is an incredible system and recording for having facts, for telephones, for everything. That's what's organized. Every house, every automobile, every boat, every airplane, every stock, every bond, every dollar bill, every euro has got a number and is identified as a fact. Now, I know that the Westerners are not too convinced. They say it's a cute idea, but I'm not convinced. Well, they're going to get convinced in the next few years, because the recession that they have begun over the last 2 years is the result of not having sufficient facts. Mr. Paulson, a former Secretary of Treasury of the United States, in October 2008, said, we have a problem. We have created a new type of security called derivatives that is in some major big banks, and some of them are not performing because they're guaranteeing mortgage loans to subprime housing. And some of them have stopped performing, and they are therefore toxic. And they may be that some banks have so much of these non-performing securities or assets that they're basically insolvent. So I'm going to go in there and put money and buy them up and take it out. And my program is called the Troubled Assets Relief Program, TARP. Please give me close to $1 trillion to go out there and save banks, otherwise it will be a financial collapse. And head of the Speaker of the House, Pelosi, says, yes, we will give you the money, and she even tells Mr. Paulson, please, get off the floor. You look like a Catholic. I will give you the money. So they give him the money. Then, about 15 days later, he comes on television and says, we're not going to buy those troubled assets from the banks anymore. What we're going to do is take the money you've given me and create stimulus programs and actually put it to the banks so that the public knows that the government of the United States, and then the government of France, and then the government of England, and then the government of China, and the government of every country is solidly behind the banks. That's the strategy. Now, I got curious. I said, funny. Why didn't he do the first thing, which was buy the assets? So I have actually very good contacts. I'm very pro-American. I think America is the most interesting democracy and the most probably interesting country in the world for its technological advances, for its creation of a market economy. So I have a lot of good friends there. So I went to ask my good friends. At the very top, you're, of course, one of my most important friends, but I have also important friends that I can talk to elsewhere. And I went and I said, why didn't he take out the troubled assets? Paulson. And the reply I got was, he couldn't find them. The first time the West has created a system of assets that are not recorded, it's the troubled assets of the West that are called derivative securities. And when I went to my other friend, Chris Cox, who's the head of the Securities Exchange Commission, to ask how many of these securities existed that were not recorded, he said they did a study and he made an official announcement. I think there's about $600 trillion. The whole product of the United States is $13 trillion, 1 year. All the world together, Mongolians, Peruvians, Americans, probably have $60 trillion, maybe 50 to 60 we think. According to Chris Cox, the amount of paper that's unrecorded out there is $600 trillion. It's the biggest shadow economy in the world. Forget the Mongolian shadow economy. They've got the biggest economy because they never interiorized the lesson that the success of capitalism is concrete information on assets, and that all assets that are paper are not just paper that floats. Every piece of paper responds to something concrete. This reflects that. We now have paper on ideas, but ideas are concrete. We have paper on formulas. You can be a cook that has a new way to do a filet mignon. That's an idea that has money behind it. You can put something in it. But you can't create paper about paper. That's what we Latin Americans do. It's called inflation. So, don't expect, when I finish talking to you, that you're going to get a lot of first world economists saying, you know, you were right to make Mr. De Soto an important speaker in your conference. Because the guys who invented the market economy in America, in Europe, in Japan, are dead. The guys that are interesting for us are dead. You're going to find out about them by reading. The guys that you talk to are modern. The rule, the basic challenge of any developing country, and that's yourself, as your Prime Minister has been saying, is the rule of law. The rule of law means one law, not many laws, because it's obvious that in Mongolia you have one law for one neighborhood, one law for another neighborhood. Your nomads out there have another law, and maybe even among the nomads there are 17 different laws. One law. That's the rule of law. And when you have one rule of law, it means you have one information system. It means you can work as a nation, and you can work within the globe. And it means that you can talk to other human beings. And it means that you can get as close as possible to know the truth. Because the truth is being updated every day. And for it to be updated, that rule of law has to be economical. Because you can title anybody you want to. But if to retitle or to change the title, it costs them too much, they won't retitle. So you need a system that is so cheap that it is cheaper in Mongolia to do the rule of law than to be in the shadow economy. Your rule of law has got to be cheaper than your shadow economy, otherwise your shadow economy will grow again. The same way it has just grown in the United States. So, I am now ending my speech, and like all good speeches, I have conclusions. Conclusion. When somebody says financing is bad, but the real economy is okay. I have a dear American friend who told me, look, we're in a mess. But the real economy is okay. We have a country with a lot of resources. We have good people, and we have two oceans. I said